Okay, so hello there everyone and welcome back to what I'm hoping today is going to actually be kind of a bit of a different video. Now, obviously each year I kind of do like a new set of these like future prediction and opinion videos year on year on year, and I figured that it's a new decade and I'm going to do this in a new way from now on. So what I've decided that I'm doing, I've been wanting to kind of do this for a while as some more kind of podcast kind of videos, because obviously in videos where I've got stuff to show you on the screen, then that's great, but a lot of the time you haven't. So a lot of the time it'll just be a couple of pictures I've got to show you when I'm sharing news about a new ride edition. Yeah, just a basic few pictures, or sometimes nothing when you're talking about future predictions about what you could see coming to a theme park, especially one that you haven't been to in a while. So that's what we're going to try and do, is just more of a podcast video once a week, or that's probably what we're going to do. So, you know, it'll be sometime during the week each week, I'm guessing, and but this won't affect winter weekends. We will still be doing 2 normal videos every weekend, and that won't change, but this is just something kind of extra on top of it as well. But yeah, so that won't change in the slightest. But yeah, I just thought this could be something new to give a try, and I am also going to try and put more stuff on the website too. So yeah, so today basically I'm just going to be giving some of my kind of basic thoughts on what I could see coming to Blackpool Pleasure Beach over the next kind of decade. And you know, we're going to focus on what's going to happen over the next couple of years, but then we'll get more distant out, and I'm not going to give like real like assigned years to each thing, because I don't really know. I'm just going to give like some rough predictions over what I could see coming to these parks in the future, but most importantly what I want to come to these parks in the future and what I think would be most beneficial. So basically I'm going to say a load of great things that could come to each park, and then try and rein it in a bit to something that's a bit more realistic that could actually happen. So yeah, so today we're going to start with Blackpool Pleasure Beach, simply because that is the first park that's opening in the UK. So I want to get this one done first, and then we have more time to kind of do the rest of them. So, Blackpool Pleasure Beach then. So, over the past 10 years, what's happened? Well, further back than the past 10 years, but obviously Amanda Thompson took over, and she quickly moved into a wristband system. And yeah, that's been quite controversial with some people. You can no longer get in for free, obviously, and the price to get into the park keeps going up and up and up. Now, a few years ago, it was just a few pounds to get in. Then it went up to, I think it was £6, and then now it's £10 just to get into the park, even if you don't want to go on a single ride. And yeah, so that's the main theme I'm going to be talking about today, and kind of some of the future ticketing systems that they could do along with new rides they could get, because the current system isn't working and it's not making them any money, because the Pleasure Beach, so I've heard, have actually just made a loss over the past year, so they've not made any profit, and that's concerning for a big major UK theme park, that they're making a loss. And yeah, and I think I know why. I think it's very obvious why, and yeah, we're going to talk about that today. But other than that, over the past few years, obviously they have only got 3 new attractions over the past 10 years, and they did used to get a new attraction every year, but that has gone down now. They obviously did get Red Arrow Skyforce in 2015. A few years earlier, the gold mine was rethemed into Wallace and Gromit. And sorry, I forgot as well, in 2011, Nickelodeon Land came to the park. And more recently, in 2018, we got Icon. So that's basically everything that's happened over the last 10 years. Obviously, there have been a few ride removals as well, and most notably, the Wild Mouse, which is no longer at the park. But yeah, so the problem in my mind as to why the Pleasure Beach is making a loss is because of the way the ticketing system works. Now, the problem is that Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which is a real advancement for the park if they use it to their advantage, it's in the middle of Blackpool. Now, Blackpool, obviously it gets loads of tourists, you know, it's full of pubs, full of bars, and they don't really use that to their advantage. So basically, other than on 8 nights a year, on like random Saturdays, a lot of them are like in September and October as well, when less people are even there. I mean, you know, they're open until 10 o'clock. Other times of the year, it'll be 5, 6 o'clock that they shut. You yet they'll open way early at like 10 a.m. in the morning, and I just don't think that that works. Now, reason being is that if, for example, they say let people in for free or let people in for literally just like £1 or £2, then they could get a lot more people into the park that would walk past it anyway, and these people might just come in and have a go on, say, 1 or 2 rides. You know, they might not want to buy a £38 ride wristband. They might just be on a night out in Blackpool and think, oh yeah, there's the Pepsi Max big one, the biggest roller coaster in the country. You know what, let's go and have a go on it. And they could make an absolute fortune through that, along with the purchase of wristbands. And I think that they need to redo the wristband structure so that, like, from a certain time you can buy like a half price wristband. You know, there's different wristband prices from the different times that you get them. So, you know, if you rock up there in the evening, I mean, I know people who've been going around the illuminations in Blackpool in, say, September time, and they were hoping to go into the pleasure beach and you know, have a go on a few rides there. And yeah, like, they wanted to buy a wristband for a few hours, and but they couldn't do because, one, the park was shut, even though it was like illumination switch on night, which makes no sense to me. Or it certainly wasn't open very late, or it was a couple of weeks after or something like that. But yeah, it was a peak night in Blackpool, and Blackpool Pleasure Beach wasn't open late. And yeah, so you can't just go in just to go on a few rides, and I think that that is a big problem for the park. And the fact that they're charging you £10 to get in, and then the prices for rides, if you do pay per ride, are absolutely extortionate. I mean, Icon, for one ride in it, is £15. I mean, 15 quid for one go on a roller coaster is absolutely absurd. And if anyone does pay that, they want their head testing, because you can get a wristband for only a few pounds more if you book online. But that's the point, that not a lot of people, you know, if they just want to pop into the pleasure beach for half an hour and have a go on a few rides, want a wristband, or pop in and take the kids into Nickelodeon Land for an hour. You know, they don't need a wristband. And Blackpool Pleasure Beach are missing out on so many customers because of this. I mean, if they introduce, say, what Southport does, like, along with being able to buy a wristband and obviously still being able to buy a season ticket, I mean, of course you still want those two options available, because, I mean, most people, like 60-70% of the people who went there under this new system, will probably still be going to the pleasure beach for the day and want a wristband. But they could do as well is just let you pay per ride, but have it at a reasonable price. I mean, if they wanted, say, £4 or £5 to go on the big one, you know, that'd be something that a lot of people would be willing to pay. But, I mean, I think it's £10 for a go on the big one. Who is willing to pay £10 for a go on one roller coaster that lasts 2 minutes? And especially if a few of you are going on it as well. Like, people aren't just going to bother. And that's after the £10 to get into the park as well. I mean, it should be... I mean, I don't even think they should really charge to get into the park. Yes, I think you should still have to go through security before you get in. But I think what they need to do is just open up all them entrances that are now just the gates are closed along the promenade. So you can now get in much easier, and yet just have security there. And if they are going to charge you, you know, a couple of quid just to get in, far easier. And then you can pick up your wristbands once you're inside the park. Because at the minute you're having to queue like into that big building next to Noah's Ark to get your wristband. And that is just, I mean, it takes forever. It can take hours sometimes to get your wristbands. And it's a big delay. And it would be much easier if they just let people get into the park first. And then they can work a wristband if they just want to buy ride tokens or whatever. And that'll be far easier at that point. And then just have a load of different wristband huts spread out across the park. Then there would be no one that has to wait over an hour, which is what it is in peak season, to get a wristband. Because who in the right mind wants to wait an hour to get their wristband that a lot of the time they've already paid for online before they get into the park? No one does. So I feel like it's much more sensible if you get into the park and then you can decide what you want, or you can still book your wristband online, and once you're in the park you can just go and pick it up from a certain place. So I think that is the best way moving forward. But I do think that the current wristband system is really outdated, and I'm not just on about the way like it works in terms of queuing up. I'm also meaning the actual technology of it, because them barcode scanners at the minute are absolutely awful. I mean, 90% of the time they don't even work. You used to have a staff member stood there who looks bored out their head, and rightly so, I would be as well, just hitting a button to let people through constantly or scanning their pass because it isn't working properly. And yeah, it's just a complete waste of time. It would be far easier, like what Southport do, have say an iPad or, you know, something more modern like that, and they can just scan your wristband or your card or whatever, and then you can just get straight on the ride, and there's no more like dilly-dallying around like there is at the minute. And I think that would be a much better system moving forward. So there we go then. So we've talked a bit about the ticketing system and given my thoughts on it, and I think that is the sole reason why the Pleasure Beach is making a loss. I think that is the main reason down to it. However, there are also a few other things as well, and we're going to talk about them as we move along in kind of the next few years, and just like some subjects I want to kind of go off on a bit and talk about them. So what do I think that's going to happen to Blackpool Pleasure Beach over the next few years? Well, I think we are definitely going to get a new roller coaster in the next 10 years. I think that there is quite a good chance that roller coaster will be from Mack Rides, and it will probably be, in my opinion, a Mack Big Dipper. I think that is the best way forward for the park. And yeah, there's a few places I could see it going. There's one main place where I think it makes sense the most, but there are a few different places where it could go if need be. So the first place I could see it going in is where the Bowlerdrome currently is. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the Bowlerdrome needs shifting. It just looks ugly. With the whole Planet Rock thing as well, it's a load of nonsense being there now. It looks really tacky, and it's the one main part of the park at the Pleasure Beach that just looks really bad. I mean, most of the park, in fairness to them now, does actually look okay, but yeah, that area just doesn't. So what I think they need to do is move the arcade to where the Wild Mouse currently is. I think they can also keep some arcade machines up in that main dome building, where they have the big dome in there as well. However, I'll also talk about another thing that I think could go in there in the future as well when I move over to Nickelodeon Land. It'll all make sense in a bit. But yeah, so I think a Mack Big Dipper where that is would be perfect. And then they can also, as I was talking about a minute ago, as an actual entrance into the park, use the Pleasure Beach gate, which used to be used behind it, which is currently just going into a spare car park. That could now be used again as another new entrance. You know, Pleasure Beach sign around it. You know, they can get that nicely lit up and attract people in off the promenade and get them into the park, especially with a brand new roller coaster. As soon as you get in, people will go in and think straight away, right, I need to go on this. And that is exactly what they want. So that can go there. And but that's a big site, and it won't just be used up with the Mack Big Dipper, in my opinion, because I think that there are some other uses for it too, that site. And I think basically that whole fountain area, I think it needs to be remodelled completely, and I think it needs to be remodelled a bit like how Riverside 1 looks at Flamingo Land. Now, if you've seen Riverside 1 and how it looks before, basically it's a big entertainment complex in Flamingo Land, and they have loads of different eating areas, and you can sit outside in them or you can go inside as well. So they get rid of that whole FY4 or whatever it's called at the minute, where you've got to sit outside even when it's chucking it down. Get rid of that. Have separate little indoor catering areas where you can go inside and have chairs outside too. And then have a big permanent stage which they can use for late night openings, which I think they need to do a lot more of, which is something I did forget to mention earlier. A lot more late night riding events. And rather than planning the exact time they're going to close, just see how it goes, but promise, you know, we'll stay open until at least this time. But stay open to a decent time at night when it's busy. You know, stay open till 9, 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Or if it's really busy on a Saturday, why can't it be like the old days where they're open until like midnight? The park was making an absolute fortune, and it would be by far in Amanda Thompson's best interest to open it that late. So, yeah, but anyway, sorry, I went off on one a bit there. But yeah, and they can have this stage with a covering over it. So it's got a massive, like, glass covering over it. The one at Flamingo on the stage there. So if it rains, you're fine, with seating underneath it. And then a big stage on there, a permanent stage, where they can do all sorts of different events and stuff on there. And I think that would be a really good investment for the park. Rather than every time they're doing a late night ride into having to keep taking down and putting up that stage, just have a permanent one there, and that can be used over the winter period. It can also be used for guests that are staying on site at the hotel. They could always in the evenings put on kind of like private, special entertainment for those guests and open up that area and open it up in the morning before the park opens too. And then maybe do breakfast in some of them areas as well as a way to make a bit more money. So yeah, so I think that is what is best to take over that whole area. In terms of the fountains, if I could have it my way, I would move the fountains elsewhere. I mean, with the size of this area, and if they did build a brand new stage and some eating areas right back in that area and they use that area well, they could move the fountains down there and they could have like some brand new fountain shows and stuff like that. And I'm all for them wanting to make the park look nice, but that massive area where the fountain is used is basically just a big waste of space. So, I mean, fair enough, have your fountains, but just have them in different places around the park. And does it have to be one massive big fountain display, or can it be like loads of different ones around the park that they can do kind of in different areas so it's all spread out? I mean, those are options, and in the area I was just talking about, where the bowler drone currently is. But yeah, so basically, they could, in my opinion, and this was just a kind of a bit of a crazy idea I came up with, and the other idea about a Mac Big Dipper and that permanent entertainment area, I believe is very doable. I, in fact, think that could happen, and that's very likely to happen over the next 10 years. And I think it is definitely very possible. But where the fountains currently are, I think that'll be good there if they put in a massive Starflyer ride. Like one of them ones that you see at the Six Flags parks, which is hundreds of feet tall. I mean, Blackpool would be the perfect place for it. And it's probably one of the only places in the UK where they'd actually get planning permission for it. If you think about everywhere else, it's, they're not going to get planning permission. Like Alton Towers, it's in the middle of, in the Staffordshire countryside. They are not going to get planning. I mean, they won't let them even build above the trees, which I guess is understandable with it being in kind of such a picturesque location. But Blackpool is the perfect space for a big Starflyer ride. You get some great views over the coast, and I just think that is something that will be absolutely brilliant to go in that main site, and it'd still be a focus area, that plaza. I mean, just imagine him walking into the pleasure beach in that big main plaza, having a Mac Big Dipper and a big show stage off to the right, then in the middle, a massive Starflyer. I think that would be brilliant. I really do. I think that would be a really good investment for the park, and again, it would be something else that would draw people in, and it will get them spending money in the park. Now, in terms of layout-wise for this Mac Big Dipper, I think it's got to be one thing, and I don't like this, I wish it wasn't, but to get the public in, it's got to have a gimmick to it. And the problem is, and the reason why Icon didn't succeed that much is because it didn't. And Icon is an absolutely brilliant ride, don't get me wrong. Like, I get off Icon and think, wow, I really enjoyed that, I want to go around again, it was great. However, the actual Icon roller coaster is more of a ride that should be an experience-based ride. So the Icon coaster itself is something that should be... It's like at Alton Towers, for example, the Wicker Man wooden coaster. Without the Wicker Man theming, most people will think, that's a bit of a meh kind of ride. It's okay, it's not brilliant. It's just kind of a family thrill wooden coaster. And people kind of think the same with Icon, because it's really the kind of roller coaster. It's not got any records for it or any kind of, major highlights on the track layout alone. That it should be one of them rides that's more of an experience-based ride, like something you'd find at Disney. However, it's not. It doesn't have any theming. I mean, it looks all right, yeah, with the styling around it, but it doesn't actually have any theming. So that's why I think a lot of people think that the Icon ride is kind of a bit incomplete. And, it is concerning on the opening weekend when I heard people in the queue saying, oh my God, it looks so slow. Like, I mean, a brand new big ride that they've just spent £17 million on, and people are thinking, wow, that looks slow. And I heard someone over saying it looks a bit boring as well. I mean, it's not great, is it really? And that's because it doesn't have a major theming structure. I mean, and it would have been the same for Alton Towers with Wicker Man if they didn't have the massive Wicker Man that goes up in flames and all that and wows all the guests. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be that impressive. And I think that that is a major downfall of Icon, is that whilst, you know, us enthusiasts enjoy it of not trying to be a gimmicky ride, and believe me, I love that, you know, it's its own original ride. It's not like the Smile Away. It's going upside down 14 times just for the sake of it to snatch a world record. You know, the problem is with Icon is that it doesn't stand out on its own, and it needed to be more gimmicky, and I don't know really what they could have done, because the launches aren't anything special in particular, and that's what they tried to market as the gimmick for the ride. But the launches themselves aren't actually anything particularly brilliant. Nothing more special than like what they've got on Stealth at Thorpe Park or on Rita at Alton Towers. You know, they actually have a more intense launch than what Icon does. And they're more stand-out kind of launches than what Icon is too. You know, it's just kind of a gentle boost you get on Icon. And I think that that is the main problem that the Pleasure Beach will get when they come to build this Matt Big Dipper. They can't just let it be kind of a normal ride. It has got to have a big gimmick about it that draws people there. It's got to have a world's first, or, you know, the world's first this element, or, you know, the UK's only this, or being a world record. I mean, I wish it hadn't come to that, but that is the only way that people will be really drawn to the park. And you know what? Blackpool Pleasure Beach will never be a park that has theming, no. However, they do need to come up with some kind of storyline to it. And even if it's just minimal theming, they need to have some kind of theming. Like with the brand new Yukon Striker that's just gone to Canada's Wonderland. It isn't elaborately themed by any means, it just has a few barrels round it. But it still has a bit of a story and a bit of a concept with it. And I think that that is the best route for Blackpool Pleasure Beach to go down. I mean, that would be by far easier for them to market then. You know, that it's got some sort of story to it, and it would be way easier to build up hype, in my opinion. Now, what else? Let's move on from that. Now, other things that I could see coming there are in terms of flat rides. Something I'd like to see would be something similar to what's just gone to Adventure Island in Southend-on-Sea, which is called Axis. And basically, it's a Zamperla. I'm not even sure if it is a Zamperla. It might be an SBF, actually. A frisbee ride that spins right upside down. Now, the only way that this couldn't happen is because of bling that was at the park in the past. However, if they did go and do one of them, you know, put some really bright lights on it that'll flash and draw people's attention into the park and get them in there, that'll be really good. And, I mean, if you think about it now, where Trauma Towers was, that is now an empty site and there's nothing there. So they could put something like that in, or even an Intamin gyro swing. That could also be something that could possibly go in there. But, yeah, or it could go where Ice Blast currently is, because I think that Ice Blast is on its way out. The ride has a really poor capacity now. It gets really big queues, and unfortunately, it doesn't look the best anymore. However, I think for them to get rid of Ice Blast, they need to either add a big new Starflyer, or they need to add a big frisbee ride. Because the problem is that Ice Blast is noticeable from miles away. You can see it, and that draws people in. So they need a big new tall thrill ride to kind of compensate for that. And I think that the removal of Ice Blast would go in nicely with a brand new entrance. Now, I don't know what they should do with Noah's Ark, really, because it is a classic thing there, you know, and it is kind of cool that it's used as the entrance. But the problem is that it is starting to look really dated now. So, there's a few different things that they could do. The first thing is to move the entrance round to where Ice Blast is now, and have the entrance round there instead, and in a completely new location, and just kind of remodel the infrastructure on the outside of the park. Because remember, in my plan, you won't actually be buying your wristbands outside the park anyway. And so they could just literally turn that into a cafe or something, where you currently buy your wristbands now. And then keep Noah's Ark and turn it into like a bit of a Blackpool Pleasure Beach museum, where you can look back at all different stuff and different rides that have come and gone over the years. And I think that that could be something that they could potentially do, and have a brand new main entrance there that draws people in. I also think that they need to add a new entrance over where the hotels are as well, as I think that really fits now the park is becoming a resort. And well, it has been for a while, hasn't it, with the Big Blue. I don't really understand why they've gone and built a second hotel. I don't think that they've made the right decision, the kind of market they're aiming it towards. I mean, the prices for rooms there are sometimes in excess of £200 per night. And, you know, that's more to stay at than some really kind of high-end hotels. And you know what I mean? I mean, all right, yeah, it looks okay. It looks decent, the brand new hotel. But is it £200 good? I don't think it is, really. And I think that is really going some to say you can, you know, stay at loads of other hotels. I mean, let's be honest, most of the hotels in Blackpool are really grubby. And we'll only normally stay in the Hilton Hotel we usually stay at when we're in Blackpool. Or sometimes we stay in the well, where we would stay now that they've just opened is the brand new Hampton Inn. And Hampton are basically, they're another brand of Hilton, basically. It's just a Hampton by Hilton hotel. And they just opened one of them just down the road from the Pleasure Beach. And they are, you know, really nice hotels, you know, nice and clean, you know, kind of classy and all that as well, which is really your only option when you go to Blackpool. Because, I mean, let's be honest, you know, you all want, I mean, I'm really fussy about this. When I stay in a hotel, you know, it's got to be clean and it's got to be nice. And let's face it, most of the hotels in Blackpool aren't. So your only really option is to stay there, or the Premier Inn, which I'm assuming will be okay too, because Premier Inns on the whole are very clean and they're all right as well. But yeah, so your only option is to either stay in the Hilton Hotel or the Premier Inn, because they're the only two places that would be usually any good. And yeah, people will go there is what I'm saying, instead of paying £200 a night to stay in Amanda Thompson's hotel. Now, I'm sure her hotel and the Boulevard that they've just opened is perfectly clean and perfectly nice, but for even cheaper than what she's charging, why wouldn't you go and stay in the Hampton by Hilton Hotel just over the way? I mean, Hilton Hotels were a recognised brand. Most people would prefer to go and stay there instead, including me. So I don't really know why she's gone and done that, to be honest. I think she should have priced it a bit more reasonably than what she had to try and attract more people there. But anyway, yeah, they definitely need an entrance that connects up to there. And they also need to give the Pleasure Beach Express a brand new reuse the current train station there next to Burger King, and just kind of remodel that whole area. That's another area that's looking a bit sorry for itself, and just give it a bit of a touch up. Now, I'm looking forward to see them continue doing the retrack on the big one. I think that is something really important for them to do, as the big one is starting to get rough in some areas, and I completely support them doing that. It's a really good move, and it'll look there, and it'll make their major ride at the park look even better. What else can we talk about? So there's that. I also think that Red Arrow Skyforce is on the way out, which is right next to there. At the end of the day, the Red Arrow sponsorship is coming to its end. I think it's at the end of this season coming up that it'll end, because it will have been like 5 years then, 5 or 6 years. I can't remember when it opened, whether it was 2014, 15 or 16. It was one of them years. I'm not exactly sure which it was. But yeah, the sponsorship over the next few years is coming to an end on that. And yeah, I think that they might remove that, and that could come into play in terms of building the brand new entrance into the park. For that, as it would give them some more space to kind of build a wristband office there once you're in the park, and maybe a gift shop or something else that they might want to build there too. So I think that is very possible. So another ride that I could see is potentially on the out over the next 10 years is Steeplechase. Now, Steeplechase, it was built a long time ago. It's the only kind of that ride that's left anymore. And S&S have now started making their own version of it with lap bars on them instead of just the normal seat belts. But yeah, I think that's going to be on its way out soon, because at the end of the day, that is prime land to build a new ride on in the future. And I just think that in the end soon, running costs for it will get way too high. And yeah, I think that is probably the next ride that will just decide to call it a day on. Because, I mean, I enjoy Steeplechase, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really stand out anymore, kind of, as a really kind of special ride. I mean, it did for a few years being the only one. However, now it was built in the 1970s, and it probably is time for them to move on from that ride now and build something new. So, it's just a question of whether they could fit something new in that area, but we'll have to see what they come up with that. I don't think that they would be getting a new ride in there in the next 10 years, because I think if steeplechase is to be removed, I don't think it'll be for a while yet. I think it will be towards the end of this decade, and I don't think we'll be getting a replacement for that until next decade, since I think we'll be getting the Mac Big Dipper way before that, and I would estimate about 2024, 2025 for the Mac Big Dipper. So, I mean, you're not going to have a new coaster after that next decade, I don't think. I think it will just be that one main coaster, but there could be another junior coaster. And, you know, that's what we're going to move on now. That's kind of the final main thing that we're going to talk about today. And we'll finish off just going over Valhalla again a little bit. But Nickelodeon Land, now that's an interesting one as to what they're going to actually do with it. Now, when Nickelodeon Land opened in 2011, I'm guessing it would have been a 10-year sponsorship deal or whatever it is that they signed to use the Nickelodeon Land branding. Now, I think that they will stick with that IP, or if they don't stick with that IP, they'll go with another one, because I think it is really valuable to have one in a kids area in today's day and age. And I think it just works much better for the park by having it as that. I don't think it will go back to Beaver Creek, not at all. So, if it is renewed as Nickelodeon, which is what I'm assuming it's probably going to be, then you'd have to think about potential ride changes that they do. Now, the main question is what is the future for Nickelodeon Street and the Blue Flyer? Because at the end of the day, both of them rides don't really have a specific kind of character theme within the area. They're just kind of, they were there beforehand and they've just been painted to fit in and kind of just had, you know, the Nickelodeon name slapped on them, basically. So it would be interesting to see what happens. Now, I think Blue Flyer for now is probably safe, although I do think it needs to start doing 2 laps instead of 1. But I think that Blue Flyer is probably safe for now since it uses so little space. However, Nickelodeon Street, is that safe? I'm not so sure, because at the minute it can only run 1 train, and it physically can only run 1 train. So they can't just go and put another train on when it's busy, because it only has manual braking on it. It doesn't have like kind of like fail-safe electric braking on it, which is what it needs to be able to run a second train, and it doesn't have that. And the queue on Nickelodeon Street gets absolutely ridiculous. I mean, in the summertime, it can be in excess of an hour and a half. And just remember that the ride lasts probably even less than a minute and a half. That is a bit of a ridiculous time, especially for families, which is what the ride's aimed at. It's a bit ridiculous expecting, you know, families and kids to stand in a queue that doesn't have any theming in it for an hour and a half. I mean, you will get very bored in that time. And then it is such a short ride. Will it get a refurb so that it can run as they want it to with 2 trains? And, well, as we want it to, the park down. And, yeah, the question is how expensive would that be to do? And I don't think it will be very cheap to change out the whole braking system. And I think they do have a second train for it, but it's just a question over whether that's now being used as parts for the current train, and whether they'd have to get a new train made for it, because if they do that, I just add to the cost even further. And the question is whether it being an aging wooden coaster that first opened has literally just named the roller coaster back in the 1930s. The question is now will they keep that ride, or will they do something else with it? And you know, that is something to really bear in mind, because I'm not sure on what the answer to that question is. I mean, they could get rid of it, and there are definitely things that they could do with the Nickelodeon brand. I mean, particularly they could do a spinning coaster, and that could be, I mean, one of the main kind of Nickelodeon brand themes that they've got, as we've just seen with the new Nickelodeon theme park that's opened up in that mall in New Jersey in America, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's a main Nickelodeon theme. Now, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles could quite possibly be the theme of a new ride for that area, because they don't have a ride yet, and when it's one of like the main things in there, I'm guessing, in the kind of the Nickelodeon thing, I'm guessing they're going to want a Nickelodeon attraction, not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles attraction for it. So the question is, could they build a Mack family spinning coaster, just like what's at Paulton's Park, what they're building for this year? And remember, this would fit in with them liking Mack rides. Could they build a family Mack spinning coaster in that area that could, you know, go out over the paths, and they've got plenty of space for it. It could do a helix round the back, and yeah, that could quite possibly go in. I mean, you know, they could theme it like to Shells as well, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, they have quite a decent theme to go with there if they did want to build it, and it is something that could quite possibly happen. I do think that that is within the realms of possibility of happening. That if they do renew it, Nickelodeon might say, look, we want a big new ride for the area. You know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, one of our main brands, and they say, right, okay, let's rip Nick Streak out. It's been there for way too long, and let's put in a brand new Mac Family spinning coaster, which I could see happening. I do think that that is quite likely to happen, and yeah, it is definitely possible. Now, other rides that could be removed from the park, I don't think there really are any others. Other than like a few different move-arounds of rides, I don't think we'll be seeing anything else go, really, to be honest. The only kind of restaurant I could see being removed is the pizza and pasta buffet. And as I was saying earlier, just remember what I said back about them putting something in that dome building. I think they could put the pizza and pasta buffet in there and refurb that building completely, and have that current building, Nickelodeon Land, which could be a new attraction for the area, which, let's be honest, currently looks a bit of a state with the old Space Invader facade on it, which is what it has at the minute, into something more Nickelodeon themed. Now, they could either go with a play area or, which is what I'd like to see, an indoor dark ride. Now, maybe one of them kind of like 4D interactive dark rides themed to one of the Nickelodeon shows would go down quite well in the area, and it would be another all-weather attraction, so something to go inside and do when the weather isn't so nice outside. And let's be honest, the Blackpool weather isn't always the best. So that is something that I believe is very possible to do. And I do think it would be very popular with park guests if that did happen. Nick Wallace and Gromit I expect to continue for a while. It might go in the end, however, I do think that will be continuing probably for the next 6 or 7 years. What else? We have also got Avalanche. Now, I was wondering, what could Avalanche be removed in the future? Because that could be a big new site for a new roller coaster, and with it having such a limited capacity. However, I do think that that is something that could potentially be done in the next decade for their next new roller coaster there. Because let's be honest, Avalanche is prime spot for a new coaster. However, I think Avalanche is safe for a good 10 years yet, and I don't think anything will be happening over the next decade at all. And I mean, I just think, you know, it's still quite a popular ride at the minute. They're still making merchandise for it. But in the future, will it still be? We don't know. So finally then, we're just going to end it on Valhalla. And yeah, so we did make a video talking about Valhalla a few weeks ago. Go and check that out on the channel if you do want to. But so yeah, Valhalla basically, I think that probably will reopen in 2021 since they've guaranteed it to us. I think it will reopen with some changes to it, namely just make it more sustainable for the park to run. I think they'll cut back on the effects that are currently in there, like all the fire effects and ice effects, because I do think that they are just costing the park way too much to run, and I just don't think they work for the park as they are at the minute, and I think that some changes definitely have to be made to allow that ride to continue, and I think that they are going to be done. So don't be surprised if you go in Valhalla next season and there aren't as many special effects as there used to be. That is just to make the ride more runnable for the park, which is what needs to happen, because, I mean, at the minute, for an amusement park, especially an amusement park that's currently making a loss, to be running such an expensive ride that costs hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to run, like Valhalla, is simply ridiculous, and they need to make it more cost effective for the park to be able to run and manage. And other than that, I could just see a few minor upgrades to a few of the more dated rides, like the River Caves could get a bit of a touch up, and the Alice in Wonderland ride as well. But other than that, I think we are done for this. So, as again, yeah, I did just want to try out a bit more of a podcast style video for today, and I hope you did enjoy that there, where, you know, there's no specific dates or stuff. I'm just talking about some of the potential things that I could see happening to the parks in the future years. You know, it's nice and casual. It's not 2021, this ride, 2022, this ride. And it's much more laid back, just talking about some of the things that I could see happening over the next few years. And that's what we're going to go with from now on. We're going to do more of these podcast style videos as extras to the current winter weekends videos. So we'll still do all the normal videos where, you know, there's normal videos with things to look at, and I'll still be doing even more vlogs than ever next year and more construction updates and all that stuff. But these podcasts are just a new thing that I did want to try out. And yeah, I hope you did enjoy it. Now, some other things I'm thinking of doing over the next few days is answering all your Q&A questions that you gave me over on my website. Now, I have been posting all the news updates. Well, so these last two videos I did last weekend, the two news updates from that, I have actually done as like blog posts, or, well, it's not really a blog, but like as news posts on my website. So go on there, it's just called themeparkjack.com. Go over there and check that out. I have put a bit more about me and about like why I started the channel and all that over there. So you can find a bit more about that out if you're interested about my upload schedule and all that. And yeah, I'm thinking of doing a Q&A session, but answering your questions on the website to put some more content on there. And yeah, I'm going to be keeping the blog style section going on the website a bit more. So I'm going to be like posting more to that and keeping that going more. And the Q&A session, I'll do that on there as well. Some new content going onto the website for you to watch and well, for you to read and look at and all that. And yeah, please do go and check it out if you're interested. You can follow me on social media at themeparkjack. Please subscribe to me on the channel. I really do appreciate all the support from you. I hope you did enjoy today's video. Please let me know in the description what you thought of it. And yeah, I'll be guided by you guys what you think as to what I kind of do for my videos in the future. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Follow me at themeparkjack, subscribe to the channel, and check me out at themeparkjack.com. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video or podcast coming very soon. Goodbye.